Welcome back to the workshop. I'm Josh, and if you've been following along, over the last few weeks we took a knife from being dull to raising a burr, and then removing that burr and being left with a sharp working edge. This week we're going to be looking at the sophisticated sounding job of stropping your knife to be left with a razor sharp edge. Stay tuned. All right, I got myself a drink because stropping has this sophisticated mystery about it. We've all heard about it from our dads, or we know we're supposed to strop our straight razors, but what is it? So pour yourself a drink and follow along here as we talk about how to strop to get a razor sharp finish. I have the same knife that we've been using the last few weeks, and as I left it, it can slice through paper, but I don't think it can push cut through paper. And so we're gonna see if we can get there after a few passes on the leather strop. First off, what is happening with the leather strop? Well, as you can see, this piece of leather, it's holding a green compound. And a compound is a micro abrasive. It measures its tiny particles called microns, and a micron is 1/1000th of a millimeter. The green compound, and these are pretty standard, the colors indicate the coarseness or the size of the microns. And the microns in the green compound are between 0.5 and 1 micron. A knife in the factory is sharpened on a coarse grit belt. That's the shaping process and then the sharpening process, and it's left with a burr there. So after that, they take the knife to a buffing wheel, and that buffing wheel is either felt or MDF, or it could be a couple of other materials, and it has compound on that wheel. And essentially the felt is similar to the leather. It's just a material that holds the compound. It's a vehicle to hold that compound, which then buffs or polishes the bevel of the knife. So you can do this at home with either some leather that you have, other coarse materials like fabrics, like denim or canvas that you can rub a compound into, or even the inside of a leather belt that might have a coarse finish. Even with no compound, you can actually strop a little bit to remove a burr and hone the knife back into a razor sharp position. Compound is obviously going to be a little more effective and get you there a little bit faster. So what's the process? Well, I'm going to set my knife on the leather, and instead of pushing forward, I'm going to draw backwards across the strop. I'm going to alternate sides here as we push that burr, any remaining burr, back and forth from side to side, all the way from the heel to the tip of the knife. It's important to do this at the same angle as you sharpen. If you come in too shallow, then you won't ever contact the cutting edge. If you come in too steep, you'll end up slightly dulling the knife. So it's important to keep a similar angle to how you sharpened. The benefit to stropping on leather is that it's a little bit softer than the ceramic or a diamond plate, and so there's a little bit higher tolerance for what that angle can be. Make sure you follow the whole shape of the blade from the heel to the tip. And as I said, you don't need a lot of pressure, but even lighter and lighter pressure as you go will help to create a finer and finer edge. Sometimes if you have strops at home, sometimes if the strop dries out, you can use a little bit of petroleum jelly to give some new life to that strop, and then rub a lot of compound in. I've done that here, and it seems to take the compound really well. And this is one of my favorite strops to use. One other, I've seen guys use, I've actually done this once, and I used a piece of cardboard, kind of a coarse corrugated cardboard, and laid it on the edge of the workbench and stropped back and forth on that piece of cardboard. It actually worked better than I thought. Like I said, this is like my favorite way to do it, but there are other ways, and cardboard does have tiny bits of these micro abrasives in it that will help to strop the knife. That's also why your knife gets dull after cutting through a lot of cardboard, is because there are these little hard particles in there that can dull the blade. All right, this is feeling very refined, and I'm going to see how it handles on some magazine paper. I think this came out of the last article, or the last edition of Field & Stream. This knife is falling very nicely through a piece of paper, which is indicating that it is very, very sharp. I wouldn't say we've got a mirror polish, but it's highly reflective. Should whittle hair or shave arm hair very easily. There's a lot of ways to measure how sharp your knife is, and a paper test or a push cut through some magazine paper is one of the ways that you can indicate pretty quick and without any tools how sharp your knife is. A slicing cut means your knife has a slicing cut measures how, if you've got a good working edge, you should be able to slice through paper, but if you have a good razor sharp edge, you should be able to push cut and just have the knife glide straight through with very little force or pressure. There's also tools like this. This is called a best tester, that actually will give you a numeric value for how sharp your knife is. There's a standard piece of filament that you apply some pressure to cut with your knife. The scale measures how much downward force is required to be able to cut through that filament. And there's a little bit of variability in that, but it's a really good way to get a numeric value. Well, that's it for stropping. Next week, we're going to take a step backwards and we're going to look at how to repair damage to your knife. We're going to look at chips and nicks to the blade, broken tips, and give you some pointers and some safety tips for how to restore those to their former glory. Hopefully put some old knives back into your pockets and get you guys carrying your old favorite tools again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next Wednesday back here in the workshop. Thanks for tuning in this week. If you want to check out some of our previous videos, click the link here, or if you want to subscribe, click down here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.